Hi everyone, it's Miss Miller, and today I want to talk to you about setting up a quote. But before we do that, I want to share this scene with you. I want you to think of this scenario. You're sleeping, you wake up to the sun sort of glaring in your face, and you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful day. The sun is out. I am so excited. So you're feeling good and you're feeling energized, right? You're getting your vitamin D even inside your house. And then you turn on the news, and the news tells you, the weatherman says, hey guys, it's going to be 85 today. It's a scorcher. And you're thinking, yes, you know what? Beach day. So you get your suit, your sunscreen, your phone's charged, you get your towels, and you're ready. You call your girls and you're like, let's get to the beach, right? So you head outside with your bags packed, and before you know it, on your way there, this happens. It starts raining. What? Where did this come from? So you're like, oh my goodness, it was just raining, and then psh, out of the blue, I get this rain. It's ridiculous, right? Well, this is exactly how I feel when I read an essay and you give me this topic sentence and I'm so excited, and psh, out of nowhere comes this quote and you don't even set it up. I'm thinking, why would anyone do that, right? I'm expecting this essay to be perfect, and then you just out of nowhere just throw these quotes at me and they're coming out of nowhere, and I'm like, oh my gosh, can't you at least set it up? So today we're going to talk about setting up a quote. So I'm going to give you several ways to set it up. I'm going to share 5 ways to sort of set up a quote. I think it's super important. And I wouldn't do them all the same way. I would mix it up in your essay. So I might try 4 out of the 5, since I always ask for 4 examples. Try 4 out of the 5 when you're setting up your quotes. Now, the first one I like to call the colon effect. I named this the colon effect. So if you're doing your Cornell notes, maybe write colon effect on the left side. And I'm going to share with you some characteristics of what this might look like. And I'll give you an example too, so you have it. So first, it needs to express a complete thought to sum up what the reader can expect in a quote, and you want to be specific. So if you're going to set up your quote and you're going to use the colon effect, you want to have a complete idea. So it's a complete sentence, right? And then you want to be sure that the comment, like I just said, is a complete sentence. So not only is it a complete idea, but it's a complete sentence. However, you're going to use the colon to set off the actual quote. You still need quotation marks around your quote, okay? So what I mean by that is, even though it's a complete sentence, you're not going to put a period at the end. You're going to put a colon, and you're going to set off your quote. We're going to see what this looks like. So this is another characteristic that you want to use when you're doing the colon effect, okay? So this, by the way, I'm sure most of you know, this is what a colon looks like, but some of us get it construed with a semicolon. Use this to set off your quote so the paper is grammatically correct. Now, if you put a semicolon in there, then it creates all sorts of huge grammatical errors, so don't do that. All right. Also, number 4, another characteristic is avoid being repetitive before and after the colon. So if you say something in one part, don't repeat it again in the other part, and don't try to reword it. Just give a new idea. Now, here is an example, all right? And in a second, I'm going to take myself out of the equation so that you see the punctuation at the end. It's in red, and I don't think you can see it now because my face is taking up the screen. But here's the example. I did color-code it so you can see all the components that are required in the sentence that you construct to develop when you're setting up your quote. First of all, the dark blue is in one example. I love transitions. This really guides me through my reading. It makes it so quick to read, okay? So you always want to have some sort of transition phrase or sentence, or not sentence, a transition phrase or word in your work. Cassius attempts to minimize Caesar's leadership with the allusion of an enormous statue. Ooh, right? I didn't put a period, even though that's a complete sentence. I put a colon. So I'm setting up my quote, right? Why, man, he doth, and of course you can read the rest, right? And we know that if we are getting a new line in the work, in this case in Caesar's work, we have to have the line through it, a slanted line. And then we have, for our in-text citation in yellow, we're going to have the capital Roman numeral 1, then we're going to include the lowercase scene 2, and they're all separated by a period. We discussed this in class, and then the line number 33. I made this number up. Of course, this isn't the line, so you have to actually look it up. Now, I'm going to remove myself for a second because this part is important. I want you to see the period there. That period is in red at the end for a reason, okay? You do have to put the period at the end of your citation. All right. So now that we did the colon way, where you set it up with a colon, you give this complete sentence, you put colon, and then you give your quote, and you have your quotation, and you put your citation, in-text citation, and then you put your period at the end. This is the second way, which is to include a comma. Okay, so you have 4 examples in your body paragraph. That first one, you could just do it as a colon, show some variety, right? Like, oh, I have a little spice. And so you could do it this way. So the comma way looks like this. Here's the idea. Begin with a phrase followed by a said word. And what's a said word? Like we could say said, he said, she said, he said, we said, he, Brutus said, Cassius said, right? But there's different ways. We can be even more specific. So I'm going to give you a list of words that you can use to replace said, right? So we can acknowledge, we can maintain, they revealed, they threatened. There's lots of different things. And I'm going to remove myself for a second so you can see the whole picture here. I would just write down like 5 of these that you think you might want to use that are kind of interesting words that sort of resonate best with you. Okay, so let's pick any of these. And of course, if you're writing about literature, you want to write in a present tense. So these are all in the past tense. You want to say it in a present tense, like confesses, confuses, hints, guesses, okay, when you're doing your said word. All right. Now, in this case, before we told you you're going to separate it with a comma, this time you're going to use, or before you're going to separate it with a colon, excuse me, this time you're going to separate it with a comma. Okay, so this is the distinction here between the first and the last one. And the first one, you did a colon. You had a complete sentence, but in the comma, you're doing just a phrase, okay? So, for example, here's your example. For instance, again, in dark blue, I have my transition, gives me direction. It makes it easy to follow, just like the traffic signals when you're driving. Here's my setup quote. Nick criticizes Daisy's daughter when he suggests, okay? And of course, this is just a phrase. It's not a complete sentence. There's my comma in green. And now I have my quotation. I have my in-text citation as well. And as you can see, I'm taking myself out of the equation. The red is the punctuation, the period at the end, which is super important. So first we have the colon where it's a complete sentence, followed by a colon and then the quote. And now we have just a phrase followed by a comma and then the quote. So that's not very different. A phrase, sentence, colon, comma. Okay, so that's what it looks like. And now a third way to set up a quote is just to make it cohesive, right? And then here are a few ideas. The only thing between your words and the quote are the quotation marks. The word that is equivalent to a comma. So if you have the word that in there to separate your work and the quotation or the quote, then you don't need to have a comma. And your phrase and the quote make one seamless sentence. So it's going to be very cohesive. All right. So here is an example. We have, again, the transition in another case, comma, Piggy glares at the water when finally he, and then we stop, right, because we want it to be cohesive. We want our work to be sort of embedded into, or not even our work, but the quote embedded in our own sentence, spots the conch and decides to use it. And so then you can see, again, the punctuation, the period is at the end of the in-text citation, and this is just a page number. So we kind of have used several examples. We use the play, so that's where we have the Roman numerals. But then if we use a book or novel, then we just put the page number. If it's the second time, the first time obviously you put the last name of the author, but the second time in the work, you're going to just put the page number. Again, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but when you are doing in-text citations, usually your school gives you like a writer's handbook and they explain how to do all of the parenthetical citations. So this isn't always explicitly taught, but I do notice that you guys sort of need that support in getting you're setting up your quotes. Okay, so here's another example, and this is the one with a that. In another case, even Jack thought that, so I'm not going to have a comma because I'm using the word that, he might kill. And obviously, if you see that I put it in brackets, that tells you that that's not the exact words that the author uses or that Jack uses. So I changed it so it fits with the sentence, so that's why it has the word that in there. And then, of course, you see the period. Now, also another way to set up a quote is to use short quotes. So you can do, in another illustration, Tom aggressively approaches Myrtle when he, and this is from The Great Gatsby, I'm going to take myself out of the equation, broke her nose, right, and stormed out. So using some just specific phrases. I love these. This is probably my favorite one, is to use short quotes. I like to write my own sentence. I only pull, because some of us sometimes will take like a whole sentence. Well, you don't, not all the sentence is really worthy of being in that, in your example, right? So I sometimes just like to use um, I sometimes just like to use just phrases, short, choppy phrases that work best, that I think carry the most weight, and then I sort of put it into my work. So broke her nose and stormed out. And that's all I wanted to include. Maybe the sentence was a little bit longer, but I felt like those two phrases really captured the central idea that I wanted in my sentence. So I took that. I was very picky. I was choosing what I wanted, and I took it out of the sentence and broke it up and put it into mine. So I think this is a really mature way to sort of integrate the quotes into your work. And then a last one, the fifth one, is just summarizing a quote. You can take a quote and say, let's say you just want to put it in your own words. You don't really want to put the exact quote. You still need to cite it. So in a final example, Scalp initially doesn't get along with Calpurnia and resists her authority in the home. So I could have used the quote where she did that, where she was expressing that, but instead I just wanted to put in my own words for my example so I could go on and analyze it. So that is it in the nutshell. Okay, so I think we covered all of it. And really what I want to just express to you is, here I am. We talked about, you could set it off with a colon, you could do it with a comma, you could do it with making it cohesive, you could use short and choppy quotes, or you can summarize. But whatever you do, one, make sure you integrate this into your work, and then two, you also want to use a variety of them. So if your first sentence, for your example, use the colon. The next one, perhaps try the comma. The third one, make it cohesive. The fourth one, maybe make it choppy. And then play around with them a little bit and see which ones really work for you. But definitely use variety in your work. Thank you.